And we're the Y'all Show, talk with a Southern accent. And we're back now, little Mississippi State time here on the program that's all about the South as part of our SEC report. And we're going to go right to MSU country, where the co-host of the Dawgs Sports Podcast is kind enough to come on the program and talk about Mike Leach in year number 1 in Starkville, as well as other things going on with the maroon and white, and also we'll get a little SEC news as well. Hello, welcome into the show, Jeremiah Short. Hello, Jeremiah.
Hey, how you doing, John?
Man, it is great to not only talk to you, but to see you here today. Jeremiah and I, we go back a few years, and now he's got this co-hosting gig with the Dawgs Sports Podcast, and we're excited to have you on. In fact, you had a special guest the other day on your program that we're going to actually play a little clip of that interview. And then right after that interview, well, Mike Leach was in the news for maybe not the best of reasons. I'll get your take on that. But Jeremiah, first of all, hope you're holding up well with this coronavirus. And what have you heard coming out of MSU's campus as far as the athletes, what they're doing to get through this pandemic?
I think with the MSU athletes, Coach Leach, I mean, that's good to have just from a horse mouth with that. He said that, they're meeting with the players, I'm guessing through Zoom, having a lot of virtual meetings, and they can kind of tell them what to do. Obviously, it's not the same as being able to go through spring ball and be able to just see how guys are reacting in the moment and really just getting that conditioning and being able to, again, just see them up close and just see how they're going to react to situations. So, but it's not something that other programs aren't dealing with as well.
Okay. Very good point. All right. Well, let's talk about the addition of Mike Leach as the head coach at Mississippi State. You and I really haven't talked, I don't think, since football season. Did you ever envision that we'd see Coach Moorhead being sent out the door and the way this whole thing happened after what they call now the PP and miss, the famous Egg Bowl scene where a player for the other team caused his team to get flagged and ended up losing the game. MSU gets to go to a bowl game as a result of that. And then I guess they had some off-the-field issues, and then Coach Moorhead is pretty much dismissed when they come back from the bowl game, and then Mike Leach, of all people, comes to Starkville.
I mean, it was kind of a whirlwind. A lot of me and my friends and some of our coaches kind of likened it to almost a reality show at one point, especially how Leach not Leach, but Moorhead got fired, how that shook about, and I was very upset about it because I felt like it just was a bad look for the university. Just the whole handling of it was poor. Based on some of the things we were hearing about how he had lost control of the team, and we even had a former player not a guy that played under Moorhead, but played previously, under Kroom and Sherrill, who said that they can just tell he just didn't have any control of the team. Well, a lot of former players shared those sentiments, and a lot of them were very unhappy with the job Moorhead was doing. So him getting fired probably was the right move. It just was the way it was done was horrible. I don't think you do that to anyone and embarrass them in that way. Now, getting Leach, I think considering how we bungled the coaching search up until that point to be able to get, I don't go and say we got some Power 5 head coach like we went and got somebody from Texas or somebody from some big-time program. He was coaching at Washington State, just to be realistic. But at the same time, he's a guy that at least has a bit of a resume, and we at least know what to expect from him. He's going to throw the football around, air raid. But as a player told us last night in the interview, I'm waiting to see Mississippi State throw it 40 times a game. So I see it, I don't believe it.
Yeah. Well, Coach Leach, after successful gigs at Texas Tech and then at Washington State, I mean, this is a program in Washington State that, let's be honest, it's kind of one of the least glamorous jobs in the Pac-12, and arguably on that half of the country, it's pretty much being in the middle of nowhere. Which some people would say Starkville and anything in Mississippi is like that too, but he has the opportunity, and he did that at Washington State. He made them a contender. I don't think they ever got to a championship game, but boy, they really had some great seasons, and that's what the MSU administration's hoping they can do. They've got a beast just over an hour away from the Starkville campus that somebody wants to slay that beast, and why not MSU? We've seen what LSU's done. And MSU could be that team on a somewhat regular basis. And, of course, they've got the ability to hold on. And, of course, when you talk about Mike Leach, he's got such a great history with quarterbacks. Jeremiah, actually, you had him on your show just the other day, and he talked about quarterbacks. I'm going to play that clip right now on the Y'all Show and let people kind of hear what you ask about Coach Leach in terms of the QB situation and the personnel coming into Starkville here in 2020. Here's that conversation again from the Black Dawgs Sports Podcast.
A question kind of piggybacking on what you were talking about with quarterbacks. You've spoken before in the past about you vague quarterbacks with accuracy and you don't really even care because how often do you throw 50 yards? So you're not even concerned with a quarterback with a big arm. So first talk about kind of like your philosophy on the type of quarterbacks that you recruit. And then at the same time, speak a little bit about Keaton Thompson and Garrett Schrader, two players that have been heavily talked about amongst the Mississippi State fan base. Both players have kind of struggled with accuracy. And talk about how you're going to develop those guys so they kind of can fit into what you're trying to do as a coach.
You know, the biggest thing, you try to get the very best you can in several categories for a quarterback. You know, the single biggest thing, which is hard to gauge and it's hard to measure, and that's why with quarterbacks you see them come from all different classifications of football, is do they elevate the offensive unit? Do they make the players around them better? And then but to effectively do that, you have to be accurate and you have to make good decisions. And I think that's where it starts. And you can coach good decisions and you can enhance accuracy. I don't think you can just flat out create accuracy from nothing, because at some point by the time they get there, you know, they either have some level of accuracy or they don't. And then, you know, you'd like a guy with a strong arm and you'd like quick feet, which is different than fast. I guess, quick feet's a guy that really has good pocket presence and can stay out of harm's way. Fast is, you know, like a guy that can just flat out, you know, run and is a fast person, and, you know, and on a broken play. And if you go through the NFL, you know, and all the greats of the past, almost none of them have every one of those things. Almost none of them have every one. The closest that I've maybe seen in my lifetime might be Patrick Mahomes as far as having all those things. And but you know, the biggest thing is can you elevate the offense, and you got to be accurate as far as Keaton and Garrett. It's tough to say because we didn't have a chance to work together. We haven't had spring ball, and that was the biggest thing. And so the week after spring break, we were going to start spring football, and then all of a sudden, you know, the virus hit, and it was all right. Don't come back to campus from spring break for another week, and then it was, you know, don't come back until April 1st, and then April 15th, and April 30th. So, you know, that's one of the things that I think we're really anxious about is the opportunity to work with not just those two guys, but the whole team and see who can do what, you know.
And that was from the Black Dawgs Sports Podcast with our co-host Jeremiah Short, an interview with Mississippi State's head football coach Mike Leach. So congratulations on landing that interview, Jeremiah. Atta boy.
Man, that was, and I can't really take credit for that one. My co-host had a connection, and I mean, we're honest about the fact it might have had a little bit to do with, you know, his unfortunate tweet that caused a lot of controversy, and maybe he kind of wanted to, I guess you would say, needed a little positivity, as someone else put it.
Okay, I didn't realize.
We were able to provide him the opportunity.
I didn't realize in the timeline you interviewed him after that tweet came out, which, by the way, we need to go back a couple of days and remind people what exactly happened. What happened was Coach Leach, just like the rest of the world, stuck at home right now and is bored, and he's pretty active on Twitter regardless of the pandemic or not. And he tweeted a image of some woman making a noose because I guess her husband was on her nerves, and that's the point of it was just intended to be fun, and he got a lot of grief after that tweet went out. In fact, I think it's now 2 Mississippi State football players have actually intended to leave the program because of the tweet. Am I right on that?
You're correct, but there's a lot of, you know, behind the scenes things that's probably those guys probably. Okay. So I think it's just convenient excuse and a good way to make themselves look a lot better.
Okay, well, thank you for clarifying that. But Coach Leach was apologetic. We didn't play the clip of his apology or him trying to make a little bit more sense of what he was saying there in the Black Sports Podcast clip we just played. So what did he tell you in terms of the what he did there on social media?
And that's where we probably incurred a little bit of criticism because a lot of people were very critical that we didn't address it.
Oh, you didn't?
But, you know, as we went through the interview process, we had to be honest about the fact that we are probably a smaller podcast, and you having for us, that's a high-profile guest getting a Division I football coach for really any program, but for a program like ours that's still building, you know, made the conscious decision to focus on football and build that relationship with them where, you know, he could feel comfortable talking about it. Now, we did incur a lot of criticism, honestly, from a lot of Black fans that we didn't address it, but before the podcast we discussed it, we felt like it just wouldn't be proper. As far as it was kind of already overdone. He already had, I don't know if it was an apology, but he did do that, and he talked to his team, and he's doing all these, I guess, going to museums and all of that. So I think it was overdone, so we wanted to stick to football and just see what type of man he was.
Yeah, as you mentioned, he's already announced he's going to go visit the Mississippi, I guess it's called the two museums in Jackson, Mississippi, where they have not only the state museum, but they have a civil rights museum, and he said he's going to pay a visit there. Remember, this is a guy who's been coaching mostly in West Texas and in the Pacific Northwest for the last 20 years, and the history of a state like Mississippi may not be quite all that known to him. He's a smart guy, though. Remember, Mike Leach is a guy who has a law degree, and we don't have too many guys who are lawyers in the college football business. So good job again for landing that interview and everything going on with Mike Leach. So what are you hearing in terms of the way they got spring? I think they had some kind of spring practice going before everything got shut down. What are you hearing out of Starkville as far as the way the football team's adapting to Coach Leach and his system?
I don't think they actually had started yet, if I'm not mistaken. I think they were planning to start after spring break. So I don't think they ever even got started. I think with the team right now, the biggest question mark is the install of the spread offense. Because true, not spread, but the air raid. I think more specifically with that, because we've been running on the spread for over 10 years now. When Dan Mullen came, but at the same time, we've still been a running team for the most part, even under more conservative. So I think, but Leach did tell us it's going to take a lot of practice to get us to where we need to be, and I think it's a lot of uncertainty because Garrett Schrader returning, who was the starter last year for bits and pieces last year. And then we're bringing in KJ Costello from Stanford. Everyone expects him to be QB1, and it kind of fits in line with what Leach likes to do as far as bringing in seniors, starting the senior players. So, but at number 2 spot, really, I think it hasn't been determined yet. So I think it's a lot of questions that needed to be answered for spring, but they didn't get to answer them because of COVID and having to shut down school.
Okay. Well, our TV audience is actually viewing something put out by Hell State Productions right now, and that's some kind of midnight practice they did. It's not a traditional hitting, putting on the equipment, but Coach Leach was out there, so I don't know if this counted as an official practice before everything got shut down or not, but it's a pretty intense video nonetheless.
I think a lot of that was more like workout type thing. They were producing a lot of videos with the workouts, and a lot of the players were speaking out about how, you know, they were getting better through the workouts, and how it seems like the new strength coach has a lot of energy. And we've had some good strength coaches in the past, but I don't know if it's quite been the same since Coach Matt Balis has left. He's gained a lot of notoriety up there at Notre Dame. So he was one, they used to call it being Balis made. So he's kind of, seems like, I think his name is Tyson Brown, is bringing a lot of attention back to the strength and conditioning program at Mississippi State.
Well, a good hire again. It's been an interesting offseason for both schools in the SEC located in the state of Mississippi, with the addition of Coach Lane Kiffin at Mississippi and now Coach Leach at Mississippi State. And these two guys, of course, I guess they were both coaching in the Pac-12 at one time together, and now they find themselves in the great state of Mississippi coaching the different teams. And I would say Leach might be winning the Twitter war thus far with some of the stuff that he's done. If not for the controversy, he's putting really unusual, fun stuff out there and doing great interviews. In addition to being on the Dawgs Sports Podcast, I heard the interview the other day he did with a radio station out of Seattle. We actually played a clip of that here on the Y'all Show, and he was going through talking about all the SEC mascots, and that was a fun discussion here from Coach Leach. I mean, good news that he's actually talking to people instead of like being sheltered in like most of these people. You don't know what's going on.
I think it's good, you know, for understand he's not going to do too much Twitter from now.
Oh, really?
Based off some comments I heard he said off air. But I don't think he's going to be doing too much Twitter for a while. But I think it's good. Like, a coach like him benefits in a situation like this with recruiting. Like, the coaches like Saban is just now getting email.
Yeah.
That's so people forget the Saban's kind of old. So a coach like Leach, he gains that profile. I think the news thing wasn't the best look. But I think a coach like him, he's very entertaining. Guys like that coaches with a personality, engaged with Twitter, those type of things. So, and we were gaining a lot of traction in recruiting just because of that. I think him coming to Mississippi State gave us a lot of traction just because he is a personality that worked, as an analyst for a couple of years. So I think we gained that initial cachet. I think the news thing just might hurt that a little bit for a while. I think he could regain it just from honestly interviewing him. And I'm not going to say I'm going to pump him up and say he's a great guy and do maybe the Donald Trump thing and say, we're the Dawgs Sports Podcast and we're saying that Mike Leach is a great guy. Just from getting a chance to interview him, I got a good vibe from him that I think he's going to be okay as Mississippi State's head coach. And I didn't think that the tweet was representative of him at all.
Well, again, no, not necessarily, but again, he has a little bit of a learning curve to know the feelings that a noose might provide. But in his defense, and I've said this before, nooses aren't just used in history against black folks. They've been used against all kind of people, even in the Old West. You go watch a Western movie, and a lot of the villains were hung by a noose. We've hung war criminals. I know just not long ago, Saddam Hussein was hung with a noose. So in his defense, that is certainly not something exclusive to lynching here in the South. But again, he has to remember where he's located. And so anything that has any connection to anything like that is going to make some people's eyebrows raise. And as we know, one of the reasons this is a story is you've seen 2 players decide they're going to leave the program and use that as part of the excuse of why they're departing Mississippi State. So, Jeremiah, real quick before we switch over and talk about some SEC stuff with you here, sir, we want to ask you, what's your expectation for Mike Leach and MSU football here in 2020?
I think initially he'll do well. My biggest worry is that his act may wear thin because he's a little different. In a sense, it could really work out, and he may be exactly what Mississippi State needs, someone that's just different. But at the same time, he is different. And Moorhead was different. I think he's a different type of – I hate using that word different, but
yeah,
we are in Mississippi. So that's my biggest worry. He's never been big on recruiting, but he's doing a good job so far, I feel. I think we can catch lightning in a bottle. I just don't know what's going to happen after that. Like, that's my biggest worry. It could be a 3-year thing. We do really well, and then what? So right now I'm just going to do it on the 3-year window and then just see what happens after that, to be honest with you. I just worried that his act is going to wear thin. I hope it doesn't, but I know my state.
Well, we know what even at Washington State he did with the state of Mississippi. He came in and got a guy named Minshew to be his quarterback there at Wazoo, and that guy ended up being a first-round draft pick for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and what a great job. In fact, he got Minshew when I don't think any of the major schools in Mississippi nor around Mississippi even gave Minshew an offer. So I don't even know how he found the guy, but kudos to Coach Leach. Of course, Minshew's, I think, sister is some kind of athlete there at Mississippi State right now, so it's a pretty good little connection there. So give me a win. If Jeremiah Short of Dawgs Sports Podcast had to guess right now in April 2020 how MSU is going to have a season, what are we looking at from a number standpoint?
I think he can come in right away and win 9 or 10 games. I know it might sound crazy, but our defense is already pretty good, and if he can at least make the offense good, which he's proven that he's done at every stop immediately, I think the thing that might hurt us initially is the fact that we don't even know when the season's going to start. The season could easily be pushed back, and then the fact that he didn't get a chance to install his offense in the spring, which would have been very critical. We're going to probably spend the first 4 or 5 games just getting used to the spread because it's a mentality change. It's not just a scheme change. It's a mentality change. Mississippi State has never thrown the football, not consistently every game, especially not the air raid. That's a big leap to go from a power running football team to an air raid team. That's going to be tough, but I think we can win with it because just off the style of the offense, I think if the defense does well and then the offense is able to put up points, we're going to win games because people just aren't going to be used to it because no one in the SEC has run, and I know you're about to get to the SEC, has run an air raid since Kentucky when Leach was there, when they had Tim Couch in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, when he was at Kentucky. All right, let's move away from from football for a second. And one of the big stories out of the basketball season, well, do you think Mississippi State would have punched their NCAA ticket if the season and the SEC tournament would have taken place in its full? Do you think MSU could have gotten to the big dance here, or at least an NIT?
Oh, the boys?
Yeah, for the men.
Stop saying boys. The men's team?
Yeah, boys, men. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, my other co-host always makes a big thing about that. The men's team, I don't know. I think it seems like it was too much dissension. I don't know if you've seen, but we've lost 5 players to transfer.
Really?
Which is rare. I've never seen that many guys transfer. Most times it's 2 or 3 at the most. And then the fact that we lost a couple guys to the league. I mean, we essentially have lost most of our team. So that seems like that team was honed on by thin thread to begin with. Yeah. So it's just hard for me to believe a team that already was on the brink to make a run in the tournament. It just doesn't seem like it. It just seems like the chemistry wasn't right for them to, and they would have needed it to be right to make a run. I don't think that was going to happen. And
Coach Howland, again, the coach at Mississippi State, has done a so-so job, I would say, over his tenure in Starkville, the guy who had actually coached UCLA to a national championship, if I'm not mistaken, at one point. And he's not a spring chicken, so you'd think that he only has a handful of years left, and maybe this could have been that year, but from what we know, he's still going to be around next year. So Mississippi State looking to turn the corner there. Now, there is a opening, as far as I know, with the women's program, as Coach Schaefer decided to take off to the bright lights of Austin and become the Texas Longhorns lady basketball coach. So was that a surprise to you to see him go back to Texas where he grew up? Of course, he went to that other school collegiately there in College Station, so he's going to the rival school with the Horns. But Mississippi State's women's program has been one of the best programs in all of college basketball, playing for back-to-back national championships, losing both games, and has won SEC titles here recently. A big void there with the departure of Coach Schaefer.
Yes, and it's very unfortunate. I'm not going to sit up there like I've been following the women's team the entire time he's coach, but I have been keeping up the past couple of years. I think the thing that's unfortunate, he's possibly, if you just go off his resume and what he's done the last 8 years, he's the best coach to ever come through Mississippi State. I think that's the tough part, losing a coach he has a resume. He's made it to 2 national championships. What other Mississippi State coach can say that they did that while they were at Mississippi State, other than maybe John Cohen, and who's the athletic director now, and then Darryl Royal, who ended up doing it at Texas, ironically. So it's unfortunate, and it's surprised me because most time when these things happen, you hear rumors or you hear talk about a coach taking interviews or it's talk throughout the season. There was nothing. All I know, I remember looking on social media and, Schaefer's in a picture at Texas. It wasn't even rumors about it. He wasn't meeting. He already accepted the job. I'm like, where did this come from? The best coach in Mississippi State history leaves and no one even knows it's going to happen. That makes no sense. Thankfully they did it with this coaching search. They were able to hire Nikki McCray-Penson, who's a former All-American at Tennessee. Did a really good job at Old Dominion her first 3 years in a fast riser. So a lot of the fans are really excited, and we're really excited about what she's going to bring to the table. We just hired her over the weekend.
Okay, I thought I saw that, but Jeremiah, appreciate your input on all things Mississippi State. We're not done with Jeremiah Short. We're going to take a quick break here on the program, and when we come back, we're going to switch over and get Jeremiah's take on some of the other SEC teams, as this is our SEC report with a heavy maroon and white and cowbell focus. Hang on, our talk with Jeremiah Short of the Dawgs Sports Podcast continues right after this break. And we're back here on the Y'all Show, final segment of this almost end of the week edition of the program that covers everything Southern. Right now, you're in the middle of an SEC report. We've had a big-time Mississippi State Bulldog insider take from Jeremiah Short of the Dawgs Sports Podcast. He's our guest right now on the program that's all about the South. And now that we kind of have our maroon and white report in the can, let's talk a little SEC sports with Jeremiah. And Mr. Short, we want to mention that, of course, football season is still not determined if we're going to have it. Nobody really can tell for sure at this point if we're going to have college football in 2020. What's your best guess on how many games will be played here in 2020, Jeremiah?
I think a lot of us really don't 100% know. I think they're going to I don't think they want to push back the season. I think the only way that happens is they're saying that we're not going to do anything until August. Right now, of course, with a lot of reports, I try not to pay attention to too much of the COVID stuff. Not every 2 minutes, because that stuff will drive you crazy. But at the same time, and we're honest, you have to be realistic about the fact that we can't focus as much on entertainment. But my hope is that the season starts when it's supposed to start, because I think people need that distraction. But obviously, even once the season starts, there might have to be a lot of rules set in place to make sure we don't have any type of outbreak or anything of that nature. I mean, I love my football, but I mean, you want it to be a safe environment where you don't have to worry about half the world dying off. So my hope is that it starts and we can enjoy SEC football. But it still probably won't quite feel the same. But still, we love our SEC football, so we want that to happen.
Yeah, we
so
sure.
Hopefully it starts on September 1st or whenever the actual start date.
Yeah, you mentioned we love our SEC football right here in the South. Well, one thing we know, when and if college football resumes, you're going to have the last year national champion in the mix within the Southeastern Conference, as Coach Ed Orgeron of the LSU Tigers come into this season as the defending national champions. And Jeremiah, back in the day, you and I were hanging out. Would you have ever guessed, when this guy Orgeron was coaching that school up north, that he would ever become a national championship coach?
No. But I read a story on him before the national championship.
Did you?
Kind of went through a path. I mean, obviously, Coach 0-8, we joke about that at Mississippi State. And I remember being at the game where he made that infamous call where and he talked about that. And then he had a chance to coach USC on an interim basis. And just based off some of the interviews, it seems like that really hurt him that he didn't get that job. And it was an interview he did, or article that was posted on him before the national championship. It seems like he went through a path where he really learned a lot after that Ole Miss situation. I think sometimes people look at someone's biggest failure, like a Orgeron, and say, obviously he can't coach. But what I've always heard about him, I had a friend that got recruited by him. He said that Coach Orgeron is very down to earth. You hear about the big things when it comes to recruiting with him, or you think he's like a bag man or something to that effect. But I heard he's just a real down to earth guy, and he's a guy that guys will play for. So in some ways, we really shouldn't be shocked that LSU, for one, has been able to recruit talent, and two, been able to win under him, because essentially LSU's had the right strategy. And I wonder how good that team is going to be without Dave Miranda. That Coach O is not an X's and O's guy. He's a guy that he's a leader of men, and it's an overused term, but he kind of is, and get great offensive coordinators around him. He's running the program. He's not the guy out there calling the plays, and there's nothing wrong with that. Mm-hmm. So I think they have a good formula there. He's going to recruit talent, get the right people to coach them, and then it's a recipe for success. They did it for 10 years. Les Miles is an X&O guy. Yeah. So I think Orgeron just might be a little better at it.
Well, one thing Orgeron won't have here whenever there's a football season is a guy named Joe Burrow behind center. Also, Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator, took off for the Bright Lights of Charlotte and the Carolina Panthers. So with those departures on the offensive side of the ball, do you think LSU has a chance to be competitive as a champion-type team here in the forthcoming season?
I don't see it. You can't lose that caliber of talent at receiver, at quarterback, and even on the defense side of football, and lose your coordinators.
Yeah.
And then expect to win in the SEC. Maybe in another conference. I'm not saying other conferences are bad, but as we all know, the SEC is what it is. And even Alabama's experienced a little bit of slippage lately. So you can't just lose coaches and lose key players and then expect to reload and be as dominant as you were. I mean, LSU was extremely dominant last year. They were unbeatable. And I think losing those talents, I'm not a Joe Burrow fan in that way. I don't know if he's even a first-round guy, but that's not what we're really talking about. But at the same time, he was really good at the college level, Heisman Trophy caliber, obviously. So I just don't see them being as good. Maybe 9-10 wins. They still have enough talent to win games, but I just don't see them being as dominant as last year. I think that's unrealistic for anyone.
Cinderella season for sure. Now, one thing that just came out here in the last couple of days in terms of Coach Ed Orgeron, he and his wife of many, many years, Kelly, are divorcing after, I think, 20 years or so. So a sad thing there for the Orgeron family right now. But unfortunately, that happens with just about everybody. It's even happened to me, Jeremiah Short. So wish the Orgerons the best there. And of course, they're not the only team that people are going to be watching for closely here. Let's switch over to the East Division, if you don't mind, Jeremiah. And your old friend there, Dan Mullen, is projected to have an incredible 2020 season, and perhaps Florida could get back to the SEC championship. Are you buying or selling the Gators?
I have a love-hate relationship with Dan Mullen. I appreciate everything he did for Mississippi State, but as I even continue to tell my co-hosts, I wasn't even upset with us hiring Moorhead, and definitely not with Leach, because I feel like we had peaked under Mullen, and Mullen, in my opinion, is still at best a 10-win coach, maybe 9 at Mississippi State. I think the only reason he's gotten a few more wins at Florida is because they're in the East, not in the West. He doesn't have to deal with LSU, Auburn, and Alabama. You know Alabama is going to be good every year. And LSU's had a few off years. Auburn's is up and down. So you know you have to deal with them every year. But in the East, you only have to deal with Georgia. So I think he's had good runs, but I don't expect much. I think they'll be good year in, year out, just like next year. They'll be good. You know, they have Kyle Trask returning, but he's not a big-time player. They lost Felipe Franks. But at best, 10 wins, but that's more so because he's in the East. I think he is what he is. He'll recruit reasonably well, probably not to the level of Florida fans would expect. And I wouldn't even be shocked in about 2 years if Florida fans, not necessarily calling for his job, but it's heat on him because he'll start realizing he is what he is, at best, a 10-win coach.
Okay. Well, you just ruined my Florida glory story here today. So who, if anybody else besides Georgia can make a run for Atlanta in 2020, who do you have your eye on? Jeremiah Short of the Dawgs Sports Podcast.
In the East?
In the East, yes.
Probably Florida, but, I mean, Georgia, you might not even know about them because they're losing their quarterback, but I think they have a pretty good guy behind them. I'm trying to think of what his name is. I know they lost their starting quarterback.
Well, they got a transfer coming in from Wake Forest, I think.
Is it Houston or is it – no, that he's going to Miami.
Yeah, I think they've got a transfer from Wake Forest that's going to be there.
Okay. Oh, Anthony something. Yeah. I forgot what his name was, though. But,
graduate
that should
transfer.
Keep them while they're consistent. Being consistent. I think Georgia, and then they're going to have a defense under Kirby Smart. And I wouldn't be shocked this is a down year for the East because what really do you have? You have Missouri, Vanderbilt, at best they'll 6. Tennessee.
Don't you sleep on Vanderbilt, Jeremiah. Don't you sleep on those doors.
Oh, I like Derek Mason. I think he's a good coach. It's kind of like recruiting at a school like Vanderbilt. It's kind of hard in getting the talent where you can be consistent.
Yeah.
I will say the team you have to watch out for is probably Tennessee. That's the team they did well down the stretch. And that's probably one of those teams, but I don't want to be the Tennessee guy and pick Tennessee because it seems like people have done that the last 15 years and they still hadn't done it. It seems like Tennessee is as they say, the sexy team to pick mid-year, beginning of the year because they're used to be a perennial power. They're the sexy team to pick, but they never really live up to it.
Well,
so,
Coach Pruitt had a heck of a run there that last couple of games in the season, and that big bowl win over the Indiana Hoosiers in Jacksonville was incredible. So Tennessee's in the mix and all the other teams. Again, it's Jeremiah Short, co-host of the Dawgs Sports Podcast. Remind people, Jeremiah, how they can find your podcast.
Now we're on YouTube. That's I think the easiest form to find us on. And now we're doing Zoom interviews where you can see what's going on. And we've had a chance to interview a few good guys. We just interviewed Dale Warren Robinson, a former Mississippi State great. We talked about the Nicky McCray-Penson hire, and we had a former player, Jerica James, on. So the main form I think you can look for us on is YouTube, the easiest for most. We're on Apple Podcasts, Anchor, Spotify. I'm trying to think of the other ones. There's so many other platforms, but the main ones are probably Apple, Anchor, and Spotify that you probably can find us, and you can go subscribe on those particular platforms. And we have about a year's worth of content. You can go back and see our whole debates over Tommy Stevens and Garrett Schrader and the Moorhead firing. We had a lot of things. People come on and talk about that, and we talked about a lot of the behind-the-scenes things that happen with that because we have multiple sources.
Well, it's a great podcast, and it's an unusual podcast of all the various shows out there. Y'all talk about Mississippi State, but you do it from a black person's perspective, which I don't know of any program that's got something like that. So kudos on that originality and again, for landing great interviews along the way. Quite proud of you, my boy.
Thank you.
All right.
And I think just to let people know, even though, we're the Dawgs Sports Podcast, of course, we're all blacks. That's just the reality of the situation. But
you're not maroon? You mean you're not maroon and white?
We just try to come from our perspective. It's not about us getting on there and just railing about every black issue. We're just sharing our thought process on every issue going on in Mississippi State sports. And most times we don't even really touch on the racial aspect of it. We're just coming from our perspective and, being able to get our voice out there. And that's all it's really about.
And that's
all of us, it sounds corny, but we all believe maroon. We all love our program. Just the same as with the Leach interview. We don't want our program looking bad as much as the next person. We want to win just as much as the next fan. So we're just getting an opportunity to get in that media space, and hopefully people enjoy the podcast when they listen.
It's a great podcast. Again, great interviews coming, and we appreciate Jeremiah Short of the Black Dawgs Sports Podcast for being our very special guest and coming back on the program. Jeremiah, thank you, sir.
Thank you for having me, man. It was fun.
All right, Jeremiah, again, great. Check it out. You can find it on YouTube and more. Well, that will wrap up our Y'all Show today. Thank y'all very much for being on the program that is all about the SEC and all the other fun sports that goes on in the South. We'll be right back here to wrap up the week on tomorrow's show. Until that time, y'all take care, and Hail State for all you Bulldog fans.